Recording in progress.
Hello, welcome. Good afternoon. Good to see you all again. So today's meeting is more like an open house. You can talk to staff and planners in the back. We're going to have two presentations, each at 4:10 and 5:10. Uh, I'm sure you are all eager to see the concept plan that you all worked uh, last month. Seems like a last week to me. We've been having so many meetings. So we have introduced you to Tom Walsh, TSW, and Ryan before. We also have planning department staff here, Bob Buscemi, Tracy, Robin, Emily, Jackie. I don't know where Jackie is, but the planning department staff is here, and me, Shubha Jangam. Now, some of you called the city about the project and didn't know who to ask for. Well, you should contact me, Shubha Jangam, if you need more information. I should be able to provide you. Now, most of you have been with the city longer than me, maybe even lifelong citizens. And some of you came here because you loved the way it looked and is set up here. Now, this is a product of not just a good planning, but also great community involvement. I gotta tell you, compared to many other cities, Milton has been doing great community public engagement so far. And the last meeting was a great example of that democratic process. And you came here, you sat with the planners, and you gave us extensive feedback last time. You have done it again. And we've been hearing from you your preferences, and we heard echoes that you want to preserve the old buildings. We heard that you want to have small scale commercial. So this plan, this concept, today we bring you this concept is a product of all that process, and it's really your plan. And today you have another opportunity to give us feedback and make it improve. So I thank you for joining us again and staying engaged with us. With that, I want Ryan to come here and start his presentation.
Thanks, Shubha. Nice to see everybody again. Great turnout, as we've had with our past few meetings, so greatly appreciate that. As Shubha said, today is more of an open house. So we're going to have two meetings on the agenda, as you see there, or two presentations, I should say. The first starting at 4:10, which I think we're just going to get started a little early since we're all nicely seated and ready for it. And then there'll be another one of the exact presentation again at 5:10. Between those two presentations, we really want to invite that open dialogue to continue. While the boards do this, these are the final concept plans that are the result of the workshop from last month, but we are still taking feedback. So there are Post-it notes on the table to the side, pens, there's Sharpies on the boards. Please draw directly on the boards. Put your comments directly on there, or give them directly to staff if you don't feel comfortable putting them on the board. And then we will show the final product, the final product. We expect it to be just like this, maybe some little minor tweaks between now and the 20th when we meet again for the city council meeting to show them the final results and share all of the public input that we have gone through over the past couple of months to develop this plan. So with that being said, I do want to run through the presentation that we have for you this afternoon. And this is really to share the process, what we did last month on I believe that was on the 9th. So that public design workshop, which was part of phase 2 of the project. We had a shortened phase 3, which was us going back and funneling down all of that input and creating the plans that you see in the back. which is pretty similar to what you saw us drawing on at that design work session. So that's good. That input helped directly feed that design. And then, as I said, on the 20th of this month, we'll have the city council presentation to share with them the master plan, all the public input. And then we'll have another member from TSW, Caleb Rossico, at that meeting to share a zoning dialogue of what should be considered to implement this plan. And then that will then go through the process to vet that out. And that process is what I mean. I'm not trying to be vague. I'm sorry. The process of going to the planning commission, working with staff, and then going to city council to be voted and adopted if it so goes that way. So hope it does, of course. So as we said, our meeting goals today, as I've shared in the past, I always want to give us some goals, share the results from the 9th meeting, and continue to document feedback to close out the public inputs period. So images from the last workshop. Raise your hand, how many people were at that last workshop? Oh, great. So it's good to see some reoccurring faces here. And I know there's at least one person who's just joining us, so I hope you can get an idea of what we've gone through and if there's others as well of our process to this point. So this was our first public workshop where we actually sat down and worked with our planners there, Gia Lee and Tom Walsh. And Tom Walsh is here with us again tonight. Raise your hand, Tom. So Tom will be in the back again, standing next to the plans, taking comments and writing down notes as well for that feedback. Oh, and so this is the plan that we see in the back of the room. This is what was developed from that workshop. As some of y'all may remember, we did come with a concept plan to give us a jumping off point. Some of that we still see here, but essentially all these, not essentially, it is, all the changes that came from that was direct feedback that we received. And so I want to kind of walk through some of the key points on the plan that was developed. And then we can have more casual smaller group conversations in the back afterwards. One of the big things with this plan was the circulation. And I think that's really a unique aspect of this, and kind of the big idea was looking at Mid-Broadwell and how that intersected with Mayfield Road. You know, I happened to walk by the table during the workshop when this was being discussed, and I love the energy around it and the excitement of the possibilities of what this design could create and the moment it could create for visitors and for the residents of Mayfield to shut down this part of Mid-Broadwell at this point, and it could become more of a pedestrian concourse meeting area, as this is one of the images from the visual preference survey that y'all may remember taking part of. So that received the third most amount of green dots. And so that's great to see that relates then to what we had at the work tables, was seeing this idea being drawn out and visually kind of making those connections as inspiration of what that could possibly be. But another bigger part of this new circulation pattern is relieving the congestion that happens at the Broadwell and Mayfield Road intersection. So by closing off this portion of Mid-Broadwell, creating that pedestrian concourse, we then have opportunity, whether it's a T intersection or a nice roundabout, as we've become familiar with here in Milton, is doing a nice kind of almost little outer loop, if you will, to help traffic circulate around and ease the congestion of this main intersection, get people to Mayfield, and then also all the way back to the top here on the north side of the road. And so that creates a nice traffic pattern for people to, not only for visitors coming here to easily get to convenience parking and to the mid-block parking lots, but also people moving through this busy intersection. Just creating another path, another alternative. That's always a nice thing in urban design and planning, is to create those parallel roads to ease the congestion. Another thing that we saw from this, besides the circulation, was starting to look at the small pocket opportunities for small parks and open space. And the open space doesn't always have to be a soft-scaped area. It could be like this image here, which received the most green dots. I'm sure many people may recognize it as a familiar project in the county, but it's that was received the most green dots. And then the second one was here, the more the passive garden, but it's still a public space. And you can kind of see where these places are starting to be created in the plan, more kind of semi-private areas that could be more of that formal English kind of garden feel. And then areas that are more public, right off of the main right-of-ways, where you can have more of this kind of more programmed, hardscaped open space. And so you can see I identified these areas of potential where you see these inspiration images might be applied on the plan. Also, we started to get feedback on the last meeting with architectural form. We were looking at what kind of buildings do we see here? We know from the narrative and the feedback so far that it's really about being a village. And with being a village is lower buildings and smaller footprints. So from the image preference survey, we noticed that the images that received the most red dots were 3- and 4-story structures. And those were more of those heavier mixed-use structures. So it'd be ground floor commercial with 3 floors of residential units above. That wasn't really saw as a desirable product for this district. As you can see, we have commercial buildings that are in residential style buildings. Now, these residential style buildings were built purposely for commercial use. They just have a residential aesthetic to them, which it goes well with becoming more of that small village. So that makes a lot of sense that those images were selected. There was also more of a typical Main Street building selected. This received the second amount of green dots from that exercise. Looking at more of a 1 to 1.5 story kind of clear, kind of typical 1920s Main Street building, if you will. Something that we're all familiar with and it feels comfortable. It's a very nice, elegant, simple aesthetic that would go well in a small village format. So these images are matching up exactly well with the narrative that we have been hearing through this whole process. So we were pleased to see that. And again, while this is the plan drawn here is an overall master plan, and we haven't identified yet kind of what that vertical massing will be, that's why I just applied a red, identified in the key all these structures as they could be applied to the red buildings that you see. And it would be nice to vary them, of course. We don't want just all 1-story or all 2-story buildings. So seeing this type of building typology sprinkled appropriately through this district where you see the red footprints would be quite a nice aesthetic there as selected by the last survey. And then lastly, we had the residential typology, the preferred residential building form, if you will. The top 3 images from that survey were kind of the smaller, traditional residential single-family detached form. And again, some of the feedback we got from the first meeting was wanting to focus on commercial, which is why you don't see a heavy single-family detached presence within the master plan that's drawn. Through the design workshop, again, that comment stayed true, stayed consistent, I should say, which is why we have limited residential shown here, or independent residential with just these 3 or 4 cottages. But the typology that the visual preference survey alluded that we'd prefer to see there is what you see here on the images. So I won't stay much on that slide since it is a smaller portion of the site, but it gives you an idea of that aesthetic. So I hope with this slide, the residential slide, and the commercial structures, as well as then the landscape and amenity package, if you will, you start to have a visual aesthetic of what the district of Mayfield is leaning towards through the process. So that helped us a lot to refine this plan based on those images. And then also, and don't worry, try to squint your eyes and look on the screen. I know this is a lot of data up there. It's also printed on the boards in the back, so feel free to look at that. And this is obviously part of public record, so it'll be available online as well. But we wanted to go ahead and do an analysis of what we have here. And so based on that, we're looking at, if anybody's familiar with the code in Milton, you know, we base the density off of building units per acre. So what we have here is 5 building units per acre being shown. So that is consistent with the current zoning as it is now. And so that stayed true. You know, at kind of the beginning of the process, we thought it might get a little more intense, but through the public input process, again, we kept hearing village, small, quaint, and the public spoke, and so here we are. We have a nice, quaint, small footprint district at Mayfield at 5 building units an acre. Also on this list, you'll see where we broke down per area for ease, shows you the total amount of commercial square footage, as well as parking needs and provided parking. And so we are meeting those. Meaning those are very, very close to that. Again, this is a hand-drawn concept plan, so we would expect it to tighten up. And we feel comfortable with this as a plausible build out from an analysis side on the land planning side. So with that being said, there was also a conversation at the tables about, you know, wanting to see what a little more intensity might look like. And this is the alternative. So there's 2 boards in the back. They're not essentially, they are identical with the exception of this area right here adjacent to the library, where there was a desire to see an exercise on what would happen if we put an office structure in the back, and what will that do to the plan? Well, we can get the office structure back there. However, it would have to come with a parking structure. Whether that's economically feasible or not, that's for the market to decide. But it is something just to think about. That comes with a lot more, that's a more intense development by adding that there. And so when you're looking at the 2 plans in the back, please note that if one gets overcrowded and you end up with the one that says alternative, just know this is the only difference just right here. We added a parking structure to accommodate the extra office building here. Otherwise, all of this is surface parking in the base concept plan. So with that, I did just want to give a brief review of the plan. Again, we intended this tonight to be an open house. I will run through the same presentation again at 5:10. Otherwise, we really want to invite everybody here to talk with staff and the consultants, which is myself and Tom Walsh, and maybe just for ease, I'm actually going to get staff and the consultants name tags so you can see who we are. Otherwise, would everyone please raise their hand, Tom and city staff who will help with the conversation tonight, just so all the residents here know who to look for. Should you have a question or want to have a further discussion. We do all have the data sheets that I shared. I also have the full results of the image preference survey, if anybody is interested in seeing how that ultimately played out. The board in the back for the image preference survey is showing the top 2 selected images from each category. But as I said, if you'd like to know more information on that, I do have the final results and can share that with you. I'm trying to make sure I didn't overlook anything. I believe that is everything that I have at this moment. I do want to conclude, as I stated earlier, the next meeting will be the city council presentation on Thursday, the 20th. Standard start time at 6 p.m. Yep. Here in this room. And so right now, obviously, we're right here in March. We had a condensed phase 3, as I already said. And so we'll be starting, we're actually, the city council presentation will start that phase 4 and looking into potential code changes that might be needed for this plan to be adopted and able to be built, if you will. And let me actually say this too. I should have mentioned this earlier when I was reviewing the plan. Let me scroll back just to the overall image. There we are. What we are showing here is, this is if the site, if all the property owners worked together and did a master development. That's what this plan is showing. We did try our best to work within and set roadways on common property lines so that you could peel back if the development became less intense, and you could still stay true to the design intent as shown here. However, the ultimate vision is that this would be a master planned development to implement something as this and stick with the 5 building units per acre. So I just wanted to state that to clarify that, you just couldn't carve out one area, because then the density would be way too intense. It would have to be a master plan development agreement that all this would eventually be implemented as a whole. And I'll just, Robin or Bob, I don't know if you want to add anything onto that before we turn it over to smaller conversation, but I just kind of wanted to state that disclaimer with the full vision here. Is that correct? All right. All right. With that, I will say welcome the conversation, and please meet with us in the back, and we'll continue talking. And then again, we'll have another presentation at 5:10 to repeat what was just said. Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick announcement. As said earlier, I would do another presentation at, is this on? Oh. If there's anyone here that didn't hear the 410 presentation and would like an overview, you can join me at the podium. But I believe everybody has been here, so.